Greetings, everyone. Peter Maravellis here on behalf of City Lights booksellers and publishers and the City Lights Foundation. I would like to welcome you to this day-long symposium celebrating the life and work of Stanislav Grof, one of the world's leading researchers on psychedelic therapy, breathwork, and the exploration of non-ordinary states of consciousness. This event is being presented by City Lights in conjunction with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and Synergetic Press, as we inaugurate the publication of a new book. It's titled Psyche Unbound, Essays in Honor of Stanislav Grof. It's edited by Richard Tarniss and Sean Kelly, and published by MAPS in conjunction with Synergetic Press. MAPS is a 501c nonprofit research and educational organization founded in 1986 that develops medical, legal, and cultural contexts for people to benefit from the careful uses of psychedelics and marijuana. Synergetic Press is an independent publisher that for over 35 years has been producing books to promote mindful discussions of humankind's present and future lives. They have published unique and paradigm-shifting ideas in subjects such as ecology, sustainability, psychedelics, consciousness, and cultural studies that inspire both individual and social change. Psyche Unbound is an extraordinary compilation of 22 essays in honor of Stanislav Grof's 90th birthday. The contributions range over the course of the past half century and include Joseph Campbell's 1971 Cooper Union lecture setting forth the importance of Dr. Grof's research. Also included is a wide range of acknowledgments of Dr. Grof's work from such notable figures as Houston Smith, Fritjof Capra, and researchers Charles Grob, Michael Mithofer, Thomas Riedlinger, Jenny Wade, William Keepan, and several others. Their contributions highlight the path-breaking life work of Stanislav Grof and explore the depths of his research, the significance of his work's influence upon the study of religion and mysticism, and upon the current renaissance of psychedelic therapy, the implications of the transpersonal experience for social and cultural change, as well as findings from quantum and relativistic physics, which parallel the discoveries and insights of Mr. Grof's work, and much, much more. The influence of Stanislav Grof's work upon the landscape of transpersonal psychology has been significant, to say the least. In 1969, together with Abraham Maslow and Anthony Sutich, amongst others, Mr. Grof helped initiate the publication of the first issue of the Journal of Transpersonal Psychology, the leading academic journal in the field. The very term transpersonal itself began appearing in academic journals from 1970 onward, in great part because of the trailblazing research of Dr. Grof. His exploration of the perinatal or birth-related realm as an organizing principle for the psyche was groundbreaking. His innovative work with holotropic breathwork has changed the landscape of therapeutic practice. So throughout a lifetime of work, he has generated a map of human consciousness that offers powerful tools to researchers, therapists, healers, artists, and anyone interested in self-development to explore the spectrum of consciousness. His work has been recognized as having both inherited and extended the great revolution in psychology begun by Freud and Jung. This makes our gathering today an historic occasion that here at City Lights we are honored to be participating in. We hope to be able to celebrate and revisit Dr. Grof's work, exploring the myriad aspects of his research and its promise for the future. Special thanks go out to the many co-sponsors of this event. They are organizations that are at the forefront of the exploration of transpersonal dimensions and therapeutic and pharmacological advocacy and research. We are grateful to them for their participation. Our co-sponsors include the California Institute of Integral Studies, TAM Integration, Psychedelic Seminars, the Esalen Institute, Psychedelic Society UK, Psychedelics Today, and Double Bind Magazine. I'm going to take one moment now to allow a few people into the room who are waiting outside. Got my hands full here. So this event is also being sponsored by the City Lights Foundation, which is carrying on the legacy of our founder, the late Lawrence Ferlinghetti, by encouraging deep literacy and critical thinking through our various publications and programs. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this event is being broadcast from the site of the ancestral homelands of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. On the peninsula where I stand, 8 different dialects of their language were once spoken. So it is with respect to those who came before us that I would like to begin our weekend event and offer a moment of silence to stand in recognition of the place that we occupy, and also to recognize how many of us attending possess a privilege that many in the world do not. It is in honor of compassion, understanding, and empathy that I request we stand as witness to those who are presently suffering in the world, and that we inaugurate this event in the spirit of equity, justice, and equality for all. As many of you know, City Lights is a publisher as well as a bookstore. Over the years, we've published a wide range of books on consciousness studies, from the Yahe Letters by William Burroughs to Carl Ruck's Mushrooms, Myths, and Mithras. So from the books that we publish to the books that we carry, City Lights has always made sure to showcase the works of writers and thinkers that further the cause of self-inquiry and the betterment of society. Our founder, the late Lawrence Ferlinghetti, placed a premium on keeping in stock and publishing books that would open hearts and minds. His formative experiences in the earlier part of his life led to a lifelong commitment in support of critical thinking and the roads that lead to the exploration of consciousness. From the writers of the Beat Generation and their interest in Zen, yoga, and meditation, and Asian philosophy, to the emergence of psychedelic culture in the 60s and the great explosion of research in psychoactive compounds in the 80s and 90s, City Lights has always supported and nurtured these currents, so it is with great pleasure that we continue this grand tradition with this weekend's symposium. So our opening session today is called Charting the Way of the Psychonaut. With it, we hope to open a window into the life and work of Stanislav Grof, giving you a kind of a baseline for his work and generally setting the tone for the rest of the day. Our moderator for this opening session is David Presti. David Presti teaches neurobiology, psychology, and cognitive science at the University of California in Berkeley, where he has been on the faculty in molecular and cell biology for 30 years. For more than a decade, he worked in the clinical treatment of addiction and of post-traumatic stress disorder at the Department of Veteran Affairs Medical Center in San Francisco. And for the past 18 years, he has been teaching neuroscience and conversing about science with Tibetan Buddhist monastics in India, Bhutan, and Nepal. He is the author of Foundation Concepts in Neuroscience, A Brain-Mind Odyssey, and of Mind Beyond Brain, Buddhism, Science, and the Paranormal. In this session, we are deeply honored to be able to host Stanislav Grof himself. He will be joined by his wife, Brigitte Grof, who's also a therapist and practitioner. They will be joined by Richard Tarniss, the co-editor of Psyche Unbound, which is such a gorgeous, gorgeous edition. And I'm hoping that you get a chance to pick it up because we have signed editions today. It's this weekend only, so first come, first serve. Richard Tarniss is a professor at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, where he founded the graduate program in philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness. He was formerly the director of programs in education at Esalen, where he worked with Stanislav Grof for many years. He is the author of The Passion of the Western Mind and Cosmos and Psyche, which received the Book of the Year prize from the Scientific and Medical Network, and is the basis for the documentary series, The Changing of the Gods. He is past president of the International Transpersonal Association and serves on the board of governors for the San Francisco Jung Institute. Also joining him will be Sean Kelly, the co-editor of Psyche Unbound. Sean Kelly is professor of philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness at the California Institute of Integral Studies. He is the author of Becoming Gaia on the Threshold of Planetary Initiation and of Coming Home, the Birth and Transformation of the Planetary Era. He is also co-editor of Ken Wilber in Dialogue, Conversations with Leading Transpersonal Thinkers. Along with his academic work, Sean teaches Tai Chi and is a facilitator of the group process Work That Reconnects, developed by Joanne Macy. Also on the panel will be Rick Doblin. Rick Doblin is the founder and executive director of MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. He received his doctorate in public policy from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and has spent a lifetime immersed in the study of psychoactive substances and their healing and therapeutic properties. He's also explored the potential of psychedelic drugs to catalyze religious experience. His research led him to conduct a 34-year follow-up study to Timothy Leary's Concord prison experiment. Mr. Doblin has studied with Dr. Groff and was among the first to be certified as a holotropic breathwork practitioner. He founded MAPS in 1986 and has strived to develop legal contexts for the beneficial uses of psychedelics and marijuana. He currently resides in Boston with his wife and 3 children. Also with us today is Susan Hess-Legias, the producer of the film The Way of the Psychonaut, which you saw a clip of earlier, exploring the life and work of Stanislav Grof. Ms. Legias is one of those whose life was transformed by Dr. Groff's therapeutic process. Her documentary utilizes her personal existential crisis as a gateway to the impact of Stanislav Grof's work from the micro to the macro. We will also be joined by William Keepin. William Keepin is co-founder of the Satyana Institute and the Gender Equity and Reconciliation International Project, which has organized more than 300 trainings in 12 countries for reconciliation between men and women. Mr. Keepin is a mathematical physicist who conducted extensive research on sustainable energy strategies for abating global warming and climate change, and presented testimony to the US House of Representatives and several European governments. He trained with Stanislav Grof for 3 years in the late 80s and has applied holotropic breathwork extensively in his work. He is the author of 4 books, including Divinity Duality, The Power of Reconciliation Between Men and Women, Belonging to God, Spirituality, Science, and the Universal Path of Divine Love, and is co-editor of Song of the Earth, The Emerging Synthesis of Spiritual and Scientific Worldviews. And last but not least, we are honored to have with us Diana Hogg. Ms. Hogg is well known in the Grof community as a longtime teacher of Dr. Grof's work and leading facilitator of holotropic breathwork workshops in many contexts and in many different countries. She has taught and led training events under the umbrella of Grof transpersonal training for 3 decades. Diane Hogg has maintained a strong interest in applying holotropic principles within a wide range of and variety of cultural contexts, including social and environmental activism, women's leadership, transformational education, and gender equity and reconciliation. Since 2016, she has taught Dr. Grof's theoretical work and supported experiential breathwork sessions throughout the Center for Psychedelic Therapy and Research Certification Program at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Diane Hogg currently is serving as the director of the 2021 CIIS CPTR Mentoring Program and is founding director of the Grof Legacy Project, I should say, USA. She is developing programs supporting those training for roles as psychedelic therapists and sitters. Diane Hogg makes her home in the mountains outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I would like to note that we're going to be posting links in the chat function with more information about the Grof Legacy Project. So please, please do keep your eye out for that. So a couple of things before we begin. We'll be posting links in the chat function of your Zoom dashboard with which you may purchase copies of Psyche Unbound. For a limited time only, as I mentioned, they are signed copies. It is just such a beautiful, beautiful edition. So please, please, please pick it up. They're available on a first come, first served basis. Secondly, I'd like to let you know about a real treat that we're featuring today. Our friends at Ozo Conferencing have prepared for us this virtual salon. It is called the Synergetic Salon, and it's a dynamic virtual environment where the public can meet with participants of Psyche Unbound and also engage in discussion with each other. The salons will be held on Ozo platform. It's a 3D video chat platform where people can move freely around and have conversations. So I'll be posting links in the chat with which you can explore that as well. So finally, you may post questions and comments for our speakers in the chat function as well. We're going to see if we can fit in some questions at the end, if there is room for a Q&A. So, please do. So without much further ado, please welcome our moderator for this session, David Presti, to begin the proceedings. David?
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And welcome, everyone. Yes, indeed. Wow. What a delight it is to be having this celebration of your life and work, Stan, and to see you and Brigitte here today. Yay for that. And to celebrate the publication of this beautiful book, Psyche Unbound, describing something of the extended impact of the concepts and practices you've developed. And you've always been led by empirical data, a real scientific approach, and let the data guide your formulation of frameworks for more deeply understanding and healing the mind. And I've always thought it's so cool that your life trajectory can be captured in a single word that you coined, holotropic. And what an extraordinary word and concept that is. That the psyche, like the physical body, has an inherent capacity to heal given supportive circumstances. To me, you've always been kind of like an Einstein of the psyche, and your contributions have truly catalyzed and will continue to catalyze a revolution in scientific thinking about mind and consciousness. And you've been an inspiration and teacher to so many folks, and we'll hear something about that all day today. And so I'd like to get this started by just passing the baton to Rick Tarniss and Sean Kelly to introduce the book and to further introduce you. And then we can go around and each spend just 2 or 3 minutes speaking to the impact of Stan's life and work on each of us. And then we'll open it up to some longer stories. Rick, would you like to take it from here?
Thank you, David. I'm not sure, just speaking on a technical level here, if I have been on the speaker view for the last couple minutes, or was everybody able to see David front and center?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. It's just an illusion of my particular setup here. So thank you very much for this opportunity, really, for us to showcase the Festschrift, the book of essays in honor of Stan, but also to have Stan with us and to share with him and with all of you out there who are listening to us and watching us today, this celebration of such an amazing individual who has given us so much, and 90 years old. And I have to say, it's not just wonderful that we get to celebrate you while you are with us, but also to actually have finished this anthology of essays that we've been collecting for over 20 years, really going back to the 80s and 90s. I started bringing them together because I knew, of course, Joseph Campbell and Houston Smith, Francis Swan were all good friends and part of the world of teachers that Stan in particular kind of brought together there at Esalen back in the 70s. And they had already early on, I think Joseph Campbell was the first to make a major public statement in one of his books, which we've now is the opening essay in the Festschrift in Psyche Unbound. We call it a Festschrift, the traditional name for an anthology of essays that a group of scholars contribute that honor a scholar who has given so much for a whole lifetime, and in their senior years, one brings forth a Festschrift, a book of writings that are a festival, a festive celebration of of that scholar. And with Stan, it's not just celebrating a great scholar, it's celebrating someone who has given us a different way of approaching life and of living our own lives and of deepening our own self-understanding. I'll just say a minute about, I guess, since Sean and I are kind of starting off with a little bit about Psyche Unbound, the book, but also are supposed to say a little bit about what role Stan has played in our lives, his influence. I'll just say 1 minute more on the book Psyche Unbound. So it's basically, I have to say, these are extraordinary essays, and one advantage of the fact that although I had originally in mind the idea of bringing it out in time for Stan's 70th birthday, life and all the other unexpected and things probably I should have expected, complications and so forth, delayed that. But I have to say, to be able to bring it forth with his 90th birthday, with Stan so lucid and engaged with us and able to appreciate what is in this book, has also allowed us to bring in a number of essays that would not have been possible had we published it 20 years ago, really important ones, including contributions from people who are at the cutting edge of the current psychedelic renaissance, which also was not happening 20 years ago and is now at this point with Stan being Stan basically is the person, I think, more than anybody, who links the earlier psychedelic awakening of modern Western culture to, or as a kind of initiation into extraordinary states of consciousness, but also into new dimensions of reality that had been marginalized by the mainstream evolution of the modern mind. And that enormous transformation that took place starting in the 50s and definitely in the 60s and 70s on, then having to be forced underground by the political and medical establishment, making it illegal, the psychedelic research and therapy, even though there were so many psychotherapists. I can remember even in the early 1970s how when I first went to work with Stan on my own doctoral dissertation on psychedelic therapy, and it was widely held by many psychotherapists that the future of psychotherapy would be tremendously enhanced by the use of psychedelics as a integral part of the therapeutic procedure. And it was just it just took decades, and including by the courageous and strenuous work of people like Rick Doblin, who's with us today, that has brought about this new renaissance of understanding, research, and legalization of the psychedelic therapeutic potential. But Stan was the person who kind of, not only in the 1960s and 70s had articulated such a profound and expert understanding of this powerful sacred medicine, and brought it into and was able to articulate it in a way that psychiatrists and psychotherapists could integrate what is basically a shamanic and mystery religion from the ancient times to now, what is a powerful ritual sacred medicine. He was able to integrate it into the psychiatric and psychotherapeutic vocabulary and understanding in a way that made a bridge and sustained the possibility of moving to this renaissance during the years it was illegal. So we owe Stan so much on that account. I'll just say one last thing about my the personal influence on Stan, but I can only hint at it. Stan not only was an enormous influence in teaching me and shaping my worldview. I mean, in some ways, he came in at such a fundamental level that anything I engaged as a scholar, as a teacher, as a liver of human life has been deeply transformed by what Stan opened up to me in terms of, you know, how do we engage the challenges of life? How do we explore the deep psyche? How do we recognize that even pain and even experiences that seem to be utterly ones of defeat or failure or never getting out, the no exit, the hell situation, that all those are part of a larger process of unfolding, that are part of a mystery that is unfolding through us, and that and to trust that process, to trust the kind of organic spiritual wisdom of life and of our own souls and bodies to bring forth the transformation that is somehow our journey and our destiny. His trust has been conveyed to so many thousands of people now around the world, and that is an extraordinary gift. So I'll leave it there. Send it over to Sean to say more. Sean has just been the most wonderful co-editor with me, really making it possible to bring this long journey to a successful conclusion. So I'm very grateful to you, Sean, and would love to hear all you have to say now.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Stan. I mean, thanks. There are really no words for the gratitude I feel, the debt of gratitude I feel to you, the profound impact you've had on my personal life, my professional life. And I'm so grateful that we can all be here to honor you and your life's work. Thank you too to Synergetic Press, to MAPS, to David for your moderating. I'm going to leave my some comments about the nature of this profound impact on my personal and professional life, maybe for after, but I'll just say a few words about the Festschrift, this volume, and why I'm so grateful for it now. Not only because we were able to present this, as we put it in the introduction, this bouquet of flowers, as it were, a gathering of some of the many blossoms that have sprouted from the seeds that you have cast throughout your generative career, Stan. But it's the timing that this bouquet has arrived, that we're offering to the public and to ourselves. When I behold this bouquet and I smell the flowers in this time of accelerating planetary crisis, 2 years into a global pandemic, in a dominant culture, at least in this country, but elsewhere, which would like to convince us that we are nothing but isolated individuals confined to our personal biographies, these vulnerable little bodies at the mercy of corporate structures and impersonal forces that want to transform the planet into a mere collection of objects to be bought and sold. This dominant worldview that we're all participating in, and the anxiety that we feel, even those of us like myself who are so privileged to be protected from the worst manifestations of it, for now at least. this bouquet has arrived at that moment. And when I smell these flowers and I remember what your work has helped me to realize and experience, that I'm not only this skin encapsulated ego, as your old former friend and colleague, Alan Watts put it, but that I am essentially a being that participates in mind at large, in the soul of the world, in a fluid, holographic, cosmic process. When I remember that, I can relax into my deeper nature and not only gain some some comfort, some release from the increasing pressures of our times, but I can contact these deeper resources of our shared interbeing that help me do whatever I might be able to do to further the transformation that we are all undergoing together, the deep archetypal nature of which, of a death rebirth struggle, you have done so much to help me understand the nature of. So this is maybe all I'll like to share for now about the nature of this volume. It comes at such a great time for me personally, and we hope that it will be received by others in this time and help them in that way as well. So that's all I'll say for now. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Sean and Rick. And Stan, Brigitte, would you like to say anything at this point around the so far around the Festschrift or anything? I know we'll hear more from you later.
Very much, thank you. Maybe I will use this situation to say something that I always do these days for situations like this. People know that I have had a stroke about 3 years ago, and it affected me very much speech. I had no paralyticity, and also I hope it didn't influence my
brain. Didn't. You're fine.
Missile, yeah,
You're
missile,
fine.
yeah, like
You're fine.
what Germans say, Verstand und Vernunft, both levels of.
You're correct.
So I would like to mention also Brigitte, whom you see on the side. We have known each other 36 years, and she has worked, for holotropic breathwork. And then when I was alone, walking around in the world, then connected by telephone, and the reunion, which is now about
7 years ago.
6, 7 years, okay. And thanks to her, this very, very late age from me, including the stroke, is really most beautiful time that I have had in my life, and I thank you for that. And we have been for 24 hours, I say, for years now, and so she knows a lot about what I know, and she would help me, if I lose some words through this. Anyway, now for Rick and Sean, you are just very close and wonderful friends of me, and I thank you also. Help to create the community in the CIS, and the amazing situation where the situation where people can talk about psychedelics and also astrology. You know, I believe that is something that's coming in the future. But you have done this for years now at the CIS, and I think Rick, because you were so much also in SLN, you must very connection was happening, you know, during the 60s and 70s and so on. You really know all the people who are now in the Festschrift, and I have watched, you know, how you were trying to find out how you can choose, you know, all the best parts of the articles that people were thinking of. For Rick, and I feel that in some sense we connected almost like in a karmic way, because when you came to SLN, working on your dissertation there, you wanted to stay in SLN, and there was only one place in so many different places which was under us. So from the very beginning, you know, we were working as friends and as
Team.
Yeah. Now with both you and Sean, you have amazing sort of ability to articulate things, which of course I have not been able to do. And I'm appreciated for that. And now for Sean, even at the time when I was not at the time at CIS, you were actually coming to Mill Valley for me when you had some kind of issues that you want to clarify. You know, we were getting together for a restaurant, and I really appreciate it so much. Mm-hmm. And also, both of us were very much involved in Susan film, and also the edition that she has, which were the interviews with different people. Both of you contributed to it tremendously. And also when the ubiquity, you know, the different interviews that were there, both of you really appreciate it. Mm. So thank you so much.
And also thank you so much for Synergetic Press, for Deborah.
Synergetic Press, yeah.
And City Lights, Peter, and of course Susan for the film, and all of you for being here and contributing, and of course Rick for maps. So thank you everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stan and Brigitte. Just wonderful to hear you both. And Stan, as far as not being able to articulate, after listening to your superb articulation in multiple languages for 6-7 decades that you've been doing, almost 9 decades actually that you were doing, but that I personally listened to for 50 years, you're allowed to sit back and let other people articulate a few things too.
Well, it's also everything is recorded. We have the Shift Network courses that you can watch Stan teach, and we have the book and the film, and so it's all conserved. So, right.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, you know, some of the other languages actually were problems for English, you know, because there are different sort of ways that you see differently in other languages, and I know I put it once in a while into English.
And it takes a lot of courage to get out in the world of this big audience and, you know, not knowing if you will find all the words. So I really appreciate that so much that you're doing this for being with people. So.
Yeah, thank you. We all appreciate how extraordinarily fortunate it is to have the two of you here in person, so to speak, today. It's just extraordinary. Well, we'll hear more in a few minutes from the two of you and from everyone. But to finish the opening round, Rick Doblin, you want to take a few minutes to introduce?
Yes, I would very much appreciate that. Before I talk a little bit just about how Stan has influenced me, I want to follow up on just one moment what Rick Tarniss said, is that really Stan has been this through line of support for psychedelics despite, you know, incredible cultural pressure to turn away at different times. And I felt throughout my entire interactions with Stan that willingness to talk about the role that psychedelics would play in this larger healing process. It was never this idea that we've learned from it, we can leave them behind, there's no need anymore. I just felt that the support for that concept, that psychedelics would have a role to play, was something that Stan really courageously kept and was the through line from the 60s to the being shut down and now to the Renaissance. So there's just 4 particular key turning points in my life at which Stan was present at all of them. And the first one was really 1972, when I was 18 years old, and I had been doing LSD in college and also mescaline. And I was very much focused on trying to improve myself, trying to get more grounded, trying to get more open. And I had very difficult experiences. I wasn't able to really process all of them. I was filled with a lot of fears and anxieties and resistance, but I kept going. And it just, I had no idea at this moment really about the research. I just really knew in a way about the energy of the 60s and how that had been crushed, you know, in the Controlled Substances Act, 1970, and the research shut down all over the world. But you know, I just really knew about sort of the cultural, the countercultural aspects of it. And so when I was in the sort of depths of my difficulties from these psychedelic experiences, I went to the guidance counselor at college, at New College in Sarasota, Florida. And I said, I need help with my psychedelic trips. And I was just so lucky, talk about karma in a sense, but this guidance counselor happened to have a manuscript copy of Realms of the Human Unconscious, Observations from LSD Research, Stan's first book, which wasn't actually published till 1975. This was 1972, and he had a manuscript copy, and he gave it to me to read. And it was reading that book that persuaded me that I was going to devote my life to psychedelics. And that was sort of the fundamental turning point, because it was something that I could trust. It was science looking at the realms of the human unconscious. And it also talked about the mystical experience as one of the possible realms. And I was very much impressed by not just that experience, but by the political implications of it. That if we were really to understand how we're connected so intimately and so deeply with everything that there is, that would be the antidote to prejudice, genocide, environmental destruction. So it was really through Stan's work. And at the time, I asked my guidance counselor if I could write a letter to Stan. He actually had Stan's address. And so here I am, this confused 18-year-old freshman in college, and I send a letter to Stan, and he answered me back. It was just, you know, shocking, and said that he was giving a workshop that summer out in California. So I hitchhiked across America and ended up at the workshop at the Mann Ranch. And that was just solidifying things for me, that this was the direction of my life. I soon came to realize that I was very ungrounded. And I spent 10 years basically building things, getting grounded in the physical world. I had no contact with Stan. I had no contact with anybody really involved in psychedelics other than the books. So I felt that this decade, the books were my key into understanding a lot of the books that I had read about in Stan's book, Realms of the Human Unconscious. So the books became alive for me. And 10 years after that, in 1982, I went back to college as a freshman. And the very first semester that I was in college, I was just there a few days, and there was a workshop that Stan and Christina were giving at Esalen called The Mystical Quest. And so I arranged to get college credit to do off-campus study and to go do this workshop with Stan and Christina at Esalen. So this was like this 10-year process of working on myself, getting grounded. And while I was at this workshop, a woman, Debbie Harlow, who was not in the workshop, but she came by Esalen, and she said there was this new drug called Adam, that it was really something that would help you talk to other people better, help you be better listeners, help you be more open to love and connections. And I, heard about it also as something that had escaped into being a party drug called ecstasy. So it was both Adam as an underground therapy drug, and then also this party drug. And it was, I like to say I was stupid enough to underestimate it, but smart enough to buy some. Because I thought, if you can sit around with a bunch of people talking, how profound can that be? Since you take a bunch of LSD, you can't even talk during parts of it. But when I went home and did it with my girlfriend, and I was shocked at how profound it was. And I realized that when I read about Stan's work in '72, that was after the backlash. And here I was reading about him and experiencing MDMA before the backlash. So that got me really, again, focused on being political and trying to bring MDMA back or to protect it from the inevitable pressure that was come down on it because of Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan and escalation of the drug war and Just Say No. So it was really because of Stan that I sort of was then connected to MDMA and to devote myself to that. I wanted to get a clinical psych PhD, and back in '87 when I graduated, and I tried to get into various graduate schools, and nobody would let me in. It was very, very frustrating. But then I realized that because the politics was in the way of the science, I really needed to study the politics. So I kind of left this whole career behind of trying to become a psychedelic therapist. And I ended up going to the Kennedy School of Government to get my master's in public policy, later my PhD, which was really hard. It was hard to abandon all of this really primary focus on psychedelics. And that was the same time that Stan and Christina had started the first training in breathwork, in holotropic breathwork, the first certification training. So I did that from '88 to '90 during the time that I was also at the Kennedy School getting my master's degree. And so I felt that was the balance. I was learning about the deep inner work through holotropic breathwork, and then learning about the deep outer work about cultural change and sort of sick public policies. So that sort of kept these streams together. And then the fourth and final turning, well, not final, but the fourth key moment was in 2000, when I was at an ayahuasca conference that was Ralph Metzner had organized it. It was the first ayahuasca conference ever. And while I was there, a fellow Michael Midhofer came up to me, who I did not know. He was a member of MAPS, but I did not know him. And he approached me and said that he would be interested in what could we do about bringing psychedelic research and bringing psychedelics forward. And his first thought was, let's do a clinic somewhere, an offshore clinic. Where can we find this loophole somewhere to set up this clinic? But what he also shared is that he had been through the breath work with Stan and Christina, that his influence had been through Stan and Christina as well. And so the moment where we Michael and I, for like 15 minutes, we talked about how I don't want to do offshore clinics, want to change things from the heart of the beast, from the inside out. And I told Michael we could work through the FDA, and he said that he was also an expert in PTSD, and we settled on MDMA for PTSD. And I think if he had never, of course, had that breathwork training with Stan, that he never would approach me. And that's where we began the whole work now 22 years ago with MDMA to make it into a medicine for PTSD. So at all these four critical moments, Stan was intimately part of it and a key in all of these turning points. And I just want to honor you, Stan, and you also, Brigitte, for keeping this flame alive and how fundamental these moments have been in our.
Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Rick. And highlighting what you said about the books, the books being so important as ways of transmission into the future, the present and the future. Thank you for all the books you've written, Stan, around this subject. And Susan Loget, you've made this incredible film, which is also going to be this beautiful transmission of Stan's life and work. You want to say a few things?
Sure. So yeah, I think, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to honor Stan on this important day. And so much gratitude towards Stan and his wife, Brigitte, for their wonderful friendship and guidance and participation in the process of making the documentary. They were very much a part of making sure of the accuracy so that everything that we provide in the film accurately represents the techniques that Stan developed, the thinking behind it, the process that he went through in order to develop it. And in the course of making the movie, what I realized was that this 30-plus year journey that I've been on after what I now know was a spiritual emergence in my mid-20s, all the techniques that I encountered, that I used, that guided me on this process, were in some way thanks to Stan. He was at Esalen for 14 years as a scholar in residence. He organized international transpersonal association conferences around the world. And in the course of making the documentary, I interviewed Rupert Sheldrake, and Rupert said something really amazing. He honored Stan for creating an environment where ideas could be exchanged freely, that there wasn't the fear of being ostracized or losing tenure or no longer being published, that there was this free exchange of ideas, collaboration. And what came out of it were the techniques and the approaches and the perspectives that guided me on my journey. And then when it came to making the movie and I began to learn about Stan's life and recognized that the subjects we would be interviewing were the very people whose work had inspired me and allowed me to find my way to him, it was just amazing. It seemed like such a perfect full circle, that to make the movie as a way of honoring Stan and really recognizing the source of wisdom that had made such a difference in my life. So I'm truly honored and grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah.
Will,
we always say that what you did, that you not only work it in an amazing way, taking all the people who are in the film, you spent at least for an hour and a half, and they became interviews from it. But also you have done quite a few experiences. This is not something that you just did from the camera.
No, there was an awful, a lot of personal research involved in this project, and so I don't think I could have done it without your example of courage, Stan. I don't think I would have had the capacity to just face the challenges, to embrace the discomfort and the pain, and to work through it to find something greater on the other side. So I'm profoundly grateful for the example that you set.
And
It's such a great film, It's you, Susan, you did such a wonderful job. You were so much in service of really bringing Stan's person and his life work through to the public. And also you were, you did your own journey, and I love that part where you drink ayahuasca and you think it doesn't work and you drink more and more, and then you're really in trouble, and you show that, and you admit all this, and you really walk the path, and it's so great. I really love you for that. It's so good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so many future people, thank you, that haven't seen the film yet and will receive the transmission of Stan's work through that film. And so important for all the future for the planet, for as many people as possible to hear this story. Will, would you like to take the baton next?
Thank you, David. And Stan, what a privilege to be here honoring you and your incredible work. So for me, the impact has been, I would say, fourfold. First of all, the methodology of self-discovery that Stan developed and refined, both psychedelic therapy and holotropic breathwork or Graf breathwork. And Stan did this with such integrity, courage, and mastery, and then trained thousands of others, of which I am one of those beneficiaries. And for those of us who've had the privilege to work with these methods over the past 30 years and witnessed such incredible healings and transformations, it's been such a gift. And we'll give some examples later in the storytelling part. What this also did was it revealed the absolute resplendence and grandeur and profundity and intricacy of the psyche. That the psyche is so much more profound than the science of psychology has yet discovered. And that's the second part, is the impeccable process that Stan followed as a scientist. When I first met Stan, I had just come out of a major encounter with the shadow side of science. I'd become a whistleblower. I had seen the difficult, conflicted side of science deeply. And to meet Stan and to see how he embraced all the data and that he followed wherever the data led. And this is so rare in science even today. It's so painful too, because science holds itself back by this betrayal of its own foundational principles, but not Stan Grof. And when that data came in with psychedelics, it was so radical. And Stan just systematically mapped out the territory. No one had done this. And laid it all out, the biographical realm, that personal history of each human being from birth to death. Then the perinatal realm, the whole process of birth and death itself, and all the spiritual awakenings of that. And then the transpersonal realm, and the mythical, and the mythological, and the psychoid, and the spiritual and mystical experiences. And he created this incredible cartography of the psyche. And I want to say, because it's been mentioned already once, and I was going to say this in my talk, it's very similar to what Einstein did in physics. And this might embarrass Stan a little bit, but it's so similar. Einstein 120 years ago was facing these anomalous data of, the Michelson-Morley experiment mainly, and also the photoelectric effect that, launched quantum physics. And here he was, the Michelson-Morley experiment contradicted all of what classical physics taught, the same way that Stan's data contradicted all of what Freud and much of what Jung even had taught. And Einstein basically stood with the data, and that the speed of light is constant in all frames of reference, and with his conviction that the laws of physics should be the same in all frames of reference, otherwise they aren't laws. And with those two principles, he gave birth, he just followed the consequences of that and gave birth to relativity theory, special relativity, and then followed up with general relativity and the whole major revolution in physics that he precipitated or helped precipitate. And I want to submit that Stan basically, along with a few other pioneers, did the same thing in founding the entire discipline of transpersonal psychology. They did for psychology what Einstein and quantum physics did for physics. Third, this word holotropic means not only moving towards wholeness and healing, it also speaks to the nature of the psyche itself, which is holographic in structure and is infinite. As Stan said once, I remember in the training that really impacted me, he said, my deepest conviction is that each of us is everything. And that through these methodologies, we have an experiential way of discovering this for ourselves. What Rumi said, for example, Rumi said, the human being is not a single drop of water from the infinite ocean. The human being is the infinite ocean contained in a single drop. And this is what our beloved Thich Nhat Hanh called interbeing. So profoundly, and just take a moment of bowing to this beloved Bodhisattva who, as most of you probably know, passed away just yesterday. The last part that I want to speak to is archetypal cosmology. Stan's profound discovery, together with Rick Tarniss, that the ancient tradition of archetypal transit astrology is the best system for predicting the archetypal character and precise timing of the deepest processes of psycho-spiritual transformation in every individual human being. It is such an astounding revelation. And once again, Stan was decades ahead of his time and has been ridiculed mightily, even by some of the fellow pioneers of transpersonal psychology for this. But he is spot on as usual. And now there are at least 70 peer-reviewed scientific studies bearing out all of these aspects of astrology that Stan and Rick have been studying for years, and which will be coming forth in this new film about Rick's work in particular called Changing of the Gods. So I want to just conclude by saying Stan unveiled the nature of the psyche for us all to see. The psyche is the mediator between the physical universe and the spiritual cosmos. It is the gateway to the infinite that is available to every human being through the depths of the heart. And so Psyche Unbound is incredibly well titled because Psyche is infinite. And Stan has opened that up for the world. Thank you.
Will. We have seen, Brigitte and I, we've seen how you work, you and Cynthia, how you work with, including holotropic breathwork, you're bringing between men and women. And you have also done quite amazing things with ecology and, you know, working with politics and so on. You have really developed this far, far beyond, you know.
Thank you, Stan.
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stan. And it's been really your methodology and the work you've done has helped me to do all of the work that I do, and has also been such an inspiration to follow my truth regardless of the response from my peers at times. So you've been a real model in that regard. Bless you.
I have to tell you, when some most interesting participant, you know, in the training, because you really came with scientists, you know, scientists, and you didn't sort of let me anything sort of say easily. But then when you came out of it, you are way beyond, you know, where I was.
Well, I was kind of ruthless. You know, as I said, I'd come out of this scientific skeptical whole experience, and I was demanding proof from what Stan was saying every other paragraph. And some of the other trainees at lunch would tell me, you're irritating and you keep interrupting him. Why don't you? But Stan was loving it. He was answering every question and he could do it. And he brought all this incredible data. And my mind was just blown and expanded by what you were bringing. So thank you for bearing with me in my youthful exuberance.
You're a really great student, you know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love the comparison with Einstein. I think that is so spot on, you know, the Einstein of the psyche. And as someone who also started out in physics and is consider Einstein a hero, Einstein had an easier time of it because the psyche is just a little too close to home for some folks, for some of us, and it's hard to approach that in the same way that we approach the movement of the planets or something like that, or the explosions of stars. So thanks for the courage to stick with the psyche. Diane, one of the pioneers in taking the breath work into the world.
Well, Will, you're a hard act to follow, my dear friend Will, my colleague. I have traveled many miles with you and I miss you. So I feel quickened by just being in your presence again. And you know, I'm going to have a full role this afternoon in panel number 3. So I think I'm not going to go into a longer version of my personal story. As a facilitator of groups, I'm very aware of the time here this afternoon and or right now. And I'm going to have more minutes on panel 3 to share more about my personal journey. But I will just say that I'm approaching 74. I'm at Stan in my 30s, and my whole professional and personal life have been informed by his work. And I've had the good fortune, I'm a direct service kind of person. I have had the good fortune of actually traveling with Stan in so many parts of the world, bringing transpersonal psychology, bringing the breath work to countries in South America, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, working in Russia, working in Ukraine, working most recently together with Brigitte and Stan in China for several weeks. So my life has been so enriched by Stan's work, and I know he knows that. What I do want to mention before I depart is that there are so many of us who are passionate in this way about Stan's contribution to psychology and to our lives professionally and personally. So in 2020, despite the pandemic, some of us have created a non-for-profit organization called the Groff Legacy Project, USA.org. And you have that information in the chat function. And Will Keepan happens to be on our board of directors. We have a really dedicated group of people. It's a startup organization. We want to be a placeholder. We want actually to preserve, we want to protect, and we want to promote Stan's work and actually see it embedded in the culture in ways that we might not even be able to imagine at this time. I have felt like we have just begun to scratch the surface in terms of the application of Stan's work in healthcare and education, in terms of all kinds of social and cultural issues. And my work with Will opened my eyes to the ways in which breath work could be embedded in other contexts and actually just enhance and potentiate the experience. So please, you have the contact information. We'd love to hear from you. We need thinking partners. We need support on a variety of levels. But as a witness to what is happening today in the field of psychedelic, the training of psychedelic therapists, I actually feel it's just critical that we preserve Stan's particular contribution. I think he, way back in LSD psychotherapy, he offered us the template for best practices when it comes to psychedelic psychotherapy. And I'd like to dedicate the rest of my working years to really the promotion of his work. So I hope some of you will be attending the third panel as well. It's been such an infusion, soulful infusion for me to be here this morning and to be included. Thank you, Stan. Yeah. So thank you, David. Good to see you.
Thank you, Diane.
I mean, we have been, for years doing things together, and what I remember that at the time when there was a crisis in South America, you were the person who was going there, basically not getting anything,
Money not being paid.
Not being paid. Yeah. So today now the big money is now happening, and it was amazing that you went much more for what you want to create rather than what you make.
That's a fact.
and I have remembered always after when we were doing holotropic breathwork, and talking after the sessions, I just love those debates, the discussions between the debates. And I'm glad that you have now again the possibility to continue really freely.
And I just want to say, Diane, working with you has been one of the greatest gifts of my life. We have done this work together for so many years, and I'm so honored to be on the board, serving on the board of the Groff Legacy Project with you and working together to basically sustain this legacy.
Well, thank you. And Diane, you nailed it with what you said about what's happening now with the training in psychedelic therapy, with things rolling out so quickly and all the commodification and corporatization. It's more critical than ever that Stan's transmissions of how powerful these materials are and what they occasion for opening the psyche, that folks are learning the skills important to be with that. So thanks for continuing that transmitted process.
Thank you,
David. So we're running, the clock is moving, and I know that Brigitte and Stan, you had some stories you wanted to share. Do you feel like this is a good time to do that?
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted, before we start with stories, I want to do a short sharing how Stan influenced my life. This is pretty obvious. I mean, I could say Stan is my life and my love, and it's meeting Stan in my early years and knowing what he's writing is right. I always knew it's the truth. And having the privilege to come to Esalen with 26 years old, and just so everything I've studied psychology before, but that was not really interesting. And so basically my whole professional life has been holotropic from the beginning, and the love to Stan, and it's just my life, and to being loved and by this wonderful man. And I've never met anybody like this. He's just the best person I've ever met, and you all know him, you all love him too, because of that. And just this is the seriousness of the scientist and the silliness that that he can have at the same time. And I mean, I could accept all these outrageous experiences because he's such a scientist with such deep knowledge and integrity. I mean, he talk about the most far out stuff and be totally grounded, and he's kept his integrity all his life. You know, he's never done anything weird. And we all know that in these areas things can get out of control badly. And and I've never met anybody. He's just so strong and has such a big energy and he's so humble at the same time and gentle at the same time. So I could go on and on and on. You're just the best person. He doesn't like it, but it's the truth. You know, when I have to share this, I share a story. When we reunited, and I was so happy and so excited, and I said to Paul's brother, I said, you know, your brother is just the most wonderful person I've ever met, you know. And Stan said, no, I can't say that, you know, don't say that, it's too much. And so we negotiated, and we ended up, I could say, Stan is the best thing since the sliced bread, you know. So that was how we started. And now years later, I said, you're the best person in the world. And he says, in the world? What about galaxies? And said, oh, in the galaxies. He says, what about black holes? And so we have upgraded in our, you know, taking in love, which is also not so easy, as you all know. So I'm feel very privileged to be married to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we are working on 100 years. I'm taking good care of him.
Anyway, David asked a story.
Yes.
He's probably expected a psychedelic story. Actually, the most amazing thing I experienced was actually synchronicity. Actually, when we work with holotropic not just that, but anything that's related with transpersonal psychology, this synchronicity always increase. For example, even in training, but then certainly when we were doing it in ITA, in the International Transpersonal Conference, you know, there's just enormous synchronicity happening. And around Muktananda, you know, there's just unbelievable synchronicities. And this is the most amazing synchronicity that I've ever seen, ever experienced. It happened during our first trip to China. It was Bill Melton and May Zhu. She arranged this wonderful conference to China. And we had a group of facilitators, and my brother Paul was going there, and partner Mary. And
Diane was there.
Diane was there, you know. So we came for the first time, we were bringing basically transpersonal psychology to China. And also holotropic breathwork. We were doing sessions, workshops. And we were in the first one, which was in Jinan, which is a place where Confucius was born, the amazing master, spiritual master, and also philosopher. And we were in a hotel there, and when we were looking out of it, there was this gigantic statue of him, and we were also going every morning, and in the evening we're going around this statue. And after the evening, we were in dinner, and one of the participants came. Her name was Meng, which means actually in Chinese means dream. And she came to me and said, Stan, I had a dream about you. And I said, well, what was it about? And she said, well, my great-grandfather,
grandmother
showed up, and she told me that we have for centuries, for generations, we have generations. We have a very important and very interesting stone, and she said this should go to Dr. Groth.
We have actually a photo of that one. Right? We have a photo. Peter, we have a photo.
Well, one thing I should have given you some information. Then when we created the ITA, the International Transpersonal Association, we were looking for a logo.
The stone. We need the stone, not the whales. Peter, the stone.
Stone.
Not the whales. Yeah, the stone. Yes.
Okay, so when we were looking for ITA, we were looking for a symbol, a logo. And we wanted something with sacred geometry, and we came up with this chamber Nautilus. So now I'm going back to dinner. Then she bring a little bag, which was beautiful blue velvet, like a Shiva blue, and took it out, and there was this chambered Nautilus. And the most interesting thing is that they picked it up in the top of the Mount Everest
in the Himalayas.
And this is, of course, coming from the ocean. It is a mollusk, from the ocean, and ended up, at the top of the Himalayas. And when I studied it, what happened supposedly that about 50 million years there was a collision of the tectonic plates, yeah, and was explosion of volcanic explosion, and so these things came from the ocean. So here we are sort of bringing into China, holotropic psychology and
transpersonal psychology.
Transpersonal psychology, and we get the as a fossil we get a logo of our transpersonal psychology. So it's like a synchronicity, that waited for 50 million years. Now I was showing it in Peking. University, and in
China.
Much more of an interest in transpersonal psychology than about this incredible synchronicity.
That was more interesting for the people. They were even in
the press,
in the press. It was all over the press.
In the press, unbelievable synchronicity, and now they think incredible as the holotropic breathwork. Yeah. So what you see here, this is the logo that we have for the ITA, and then this is the fossil, and then to see how big it is. I was holding it in my hand.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Maybe I should mention we were like in a whole world of magic, because there was one synchronicity after another.
Maybe the next, can you show the next picture, please, Peter, with Stan and, yes, this one.
Yeah, but our organizers, choose the evening in the university in Peking, and Jack Cornfield at that time was in Singapore for some kind of a Buddhist conference, and they say, well, why don't we go sideways and go to China? And so they chose for the same kind of evening, and then for a while they were sort of discussing against it, and they made it evening, discussion of Cornfield and Groff. And I would say just one of the many synchronicities that happened. We were going from Jinan on a train, and we were two people who were part of our conference, and they were coming. They were part of the journey, but they were still in other parts of China. And one of them was coming from North China, the other one from South China, and they were getting a ticket for the train.
But they did not talk to each other.
No,
they did not know
they
about
didn't.
each other.
Independently, and they ended up not only in the same
wagon
of a wrong train, but actually in the compartment where we were, the group, and they ended up adjacent to
next to each other,
to each other.
Pretty wild, yeah.
But this was at that time when we connected with Jack,
not knowing that
we have never seen each other. In another country.
You didn't know that you were both would be there.
We were doing many of it, but only when we arranged it and came together somewhere. But synchronicity sort of coming to China, for the fighting for the same stage of the evening. Yeah.
Great.
Well, those are gorgeous stories. Thank you, Stan, Brigitte. Yeah.
David, should we maybe continue with the other people so they have time to share their stories as well?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, why don't we go? If we have enough time, we can do another one.
I don't know what the policy is for City Lights, since we were supposed to end at 12:30, but I'm happy to keep going. This is great. And so
Okay.
as long as nobody's turning us off, we can go for a few.
You want to share the whales, sweetheart?
Okay, I'll try to make it very short.
Okay, now we can see the whales, Peter. Peter, the whales.
I've been in many dangerous situations, obviously with psychedelic. You have seen the book of the impossible.
When the impossible happens, that's a collection of stories.
Quite a stories
of Stan's life.
Pretty wild. But this was the most dangerous situation. When we experienced the
reunion,
we actually always liked very much whales. And as I called on the telephone, and on the telephone, she told me that she's just coming to Mexico for meaning with mothers and babies in
the whales.
In Wales. And so we did it together. And you have some of the picture now?
No, I don't have a lot. This was in Baja California. They are going down there to have the babies, and you go by little boats and wait. And when you are lucky, the mothers bring the babies.
The situation where you cannot go towards well, if you're just there,
Yeah.
and they are very curious, and they bring these babies and put them so close that people can kiss on the nose. So we just loved this, and then we found some time later that it's actually possible to go, and when you can swim with the
Whales.
whales, you know. And no, I was.
Oh, this picture is me and the whale. So that's where you go. We had to go in a boat for about 9 hours out in the ocean and stayed there for 1 week. And then a small groups, 2 boats with small groups went, and we went to in the water just waiting. You know, we had very good guides.
How was I old at that time?
89.
89 with a stroke.
With a stroke, you know, and then
with
pacemaker and
pacemaker,
blood thinners
and blood thinners. So, you know, there are many possibilities that I could die there, but I really wanted to get this last possibility to have that experience with the whales.
It was really amazing.
It was amazing, and the dangers that happened actually at the time when we saw already everything was over and we were going to the shore. That was. And we wanted to have a wonderful dinner for that in the Dominican Republic.
On the land. Well, I was really protecting Stan all the time, you know, being sure he doesn't get hit by a whale or by other people or anything. But then the last evening I was had a cold, and we were already in the harbor, and the group wanted to go for dinner, and I said, okay, I let go of Stan. I mean, he can go with the group and have dinner. And then the next thing I see, I turn around, there was a little bridge from the boat to the land, and Stan walks over the bridge, and the bridge collapses, and Stan, I mean, the railing collapsed, and Stan fell on this bridge, and I was like, oh my goodness. And so, but unfortunately nothing happened. Nothing happened. And they took care of him then on the street. Well, this was in the Dominican Republic. And it was really, Baja was the first meeting where you go on the boat and they the mothers bring the babies, but the swimming was in Dominican Republic. And I have to say that we had really very wonderful crew, and they were very respectful with the animals, no chasing or anything, just really respecting their boundaries. And so
I think we haven't really said that this is the possibility when you can experience, because this time and in that area, the mothers are taking the babies and around waiting, and for some time they are for some reason they go to the bottom for
resting,
and they stay there for 20-30 minutes, and so the proof will find where it is happening, and we go there and waiting for a few minutes, and then we just go and comes like a torpedo into between us into the ocean.
Well, it was very, very beautiful, but it was a little bit of a challenge with him on the side. And I mean, you have the whale has about the size of a house, and the baby has the size of a garage, and they are free animals, you never know where they come up. I once had one under me, he just came up, and I thought I would be sitting on the tail or something like that. And so with him being a bleeding person, bleeding to death, danger and things like that it was not very relaxing for me, I have to say. It was wonderful, but not so relaxing.
I think psychedelics are safer than, at least for me at that time.
Yes. So now we have switched more to inward journeys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's telling that these enormous, clearly very intelligent creatures who are in the open ocean and can go far if they away from you if they wish, choose to come right up and be with you. And I mean, it seems like a message, that that they want to connect with us, maybe help humans better understand the interconnectivity of life. And it's been said several times today that your work, Stan, is so many. It's revolutionary and it's pioneering, and it's really years ahead of the rest of the field. And I hope it's not too many years ahead, because it's really more important than ever that these transmissions really get traction for the future of the biosphere and for the geosphere and for all of
now when people will have again possibility of doing sessions, they can confirm the cartography of that it's not limited just to postnatal experiences, but you have to go through the matrices, birth matrices, and go to transpersonal up to mythology and to the archetype.
Yeah, this is real
cartography is just amazing, as compared to what we were using in psychiatry and psychology.
It's real empirical science. Well,
David, can I interject? I would love to tell a very brief story, a holotropic breathwork story that actually saved many thousands of lives.
Well, I've been given the message that we need.
Yeah, we have the next session is actually starting in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
But
it's in the book.
Are you coming to any of the other sessions?
I could come to them. I was planning.
There's also Ozo. I mean, if you want to pop into Ozo,
okay,
that would be a perfect place to do it.
It's also in the book. So
I know there's people waiting in the other room.
I totally understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can't think of a better way to inaugurate the proceedings. This has been such a wonderfully rich discussion. Also, such a great honor to have you both, Brigitte and Stan, with us here today. David, such a wonderful, wonderful job interlocuting. Really appreciate it. Thank you all, to the participants, to those of you in the Zoom room who've joined us.
Say one minute.
Yes, please. Yes.
And which is about Rick Doblin. We all talking about the Renaissance, and this is basically something that Rick and Maps have done, and that's amazing.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And we are ever grateful to be doing this with Maps and with Synergetic Press. So everybody, please be well, be safe, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And so to David, unbelievable.
Yes, thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody watching this. Thank you for being there.